Have you ever found yourself in this situation? A vast array of bottles at your fingertips. Your mission? Find a great bottle of wine. Your problem? Where to start? I'm Chris Maroy. Welcome to Spits and Swallows. We believe life is too short to drink crappy or overpriced wine. And we want to bring you wines we believe you'll truly enjoy without breaking the bank. With each episode, we'll meet the people behind the bottle. And we invite you to relax, grab a glass, and join us. Oh, and if you've stumbled across Spits and Swallows thinking it might be a porn site, sorry to say you're barking up the wrong cork tree. But hey, stick around. You just might enjoy yourself. Jeff Warden has over 15 years' experience in wine retail and wholesale. He's an author, blogger, and proud wine geek since 1992. Susan Hislop has 17 years' experience with wine, including wholesale management. She's a foodie, wino, past president, and current board member of the New Orleans Wine and Food Experience.
I'll be your source of detailed information, including some facts and figures, because that can lead you to a deeper understanding of wine.
And I'll translate his wine geek into real speak, because we all know you don't have to study wine to enjoy it.
So whether you're a wine expert looking to refine your palate,
Or just a beginner looking for a great bottle of wine, we've got you covered. Cheers.
cheers.
So, Jeff, Susan, what kind of wine are we tasting today?
We're going to taste some great sparkling wine from the rolling hills of Anderson Valley, California.
Located in Mendocino County, just 2 hours north of San Francisco, a mere 15 miles long, Anderson Valley is home to a unique group of vineyards that produces some amazing Pinot Noirs, lively, lovely whites, not to mention some sparkling wines. It's located close to the Pacific coast where the cooling fogs come in, and this may be a little hard to believe, but Seattle, Washington, and Portland, Oregon are actually east of this Region 1 climate.
Region 1 is the chilliest climate that still allows grapes to ripen fully, but it's good because it produces wines that have great crisp acidity and they're bright and lively and fresh.
Producers you may know from the area are Edmeades, Goldeneye, Hush Vineyards, Handley Cellars, Roeder Estate, and Navarro.
And Anderson Valley is also home to today's featured winery. Right, Susan?
Yes, Scharfenberger Cellars. They've been around since 1981 and they produce some great and affordable bubbly.
Scharfenbergers are a German family that settled on the East Coast and then moved to Southern California. John eventually moved to Northern California to look after a vineyard the family had purchased. He was a pioneer in the Anderson Valley, being the first one there to use grapes to make sparkling wine. Scharfenberger uses 2 of the 3 most common grapes in Champagne, Chardonnay and Pinot Noir. They don't use any Pinot Meunier, but they do age their wines longer than is required in Champagne for non-vintage cuvées, which is part of what makes their wine so special.
Fantastic. So, if you haven't already, now would be a great time to crack open a bottle of Scharfenberger as we meet today's drinking buddy. Winemaker Tex Sawyer was born in Texas, naturally. And after graduating from UC Davis, he began making wines in Anderson Valley in 1979 with Navarro Vineyards and Edmeades. In 1989, he found his home at Scharfenberger Cellars, and he's been there ever since. He stood the test of time through a change of ownership, the departure of the winery's original founder, and even a short-lived name change. Tex joins Spits and Swallows from all the way in Anderson Valley to talk about Scharfenberger.
Tex, welcome to Spits and Swallows.
Hey, Tex.
Welcome to Anderson Valley, overlooking our Chardonnay vineyard, and excited to spend a little time with you and share a drink.
So I have to ask, because I know everyone's wondering, how does a guy named Tex end up in Anderson Valley, California?
I was trying to learn how to make beer at home because I was cheap. And so I took this little course in fermentation, and we had done a tour up to Napa Valley. And so when I didn't get into medical school, I thought, what am I going to do with this biochemistry degree? One of my classmates told the people that owned the winery, Navarro Vineyards, that they should hire me. So he got me up here to this valley, and I owe him the great happiness of my life because he also introduced me to my wife.
What would you like us to know about your winemaking technique, Tex?
It's a pretty traditional style of winemaking. I mean, the Champenois have developed the technique of making sparkling wine over a few hundred years, and they've got constant studying of what are the better ways to manage things. And I basically buy the book, you know, and as far as making sparkling wine bases. We want to make sure we have a pristine, absolutely clean wine. You can have no mistakes in the wine or no defects because the bubbles really act like magnifying glasses and show any defect that's there. You get the same acids and pHs they get in Champagne, so it makes it a great spot for growing Pinot and Chardonnay for making sparkling wine.
Champagne uses the Méthode Champenoise. Your labels say Méthode Traditionnelle. Is there any difference?
Méthode Champenoise, technically, well, according to the EU, can only be used in Champagne. Méthode Traditionnelle is being used by people who use the Champagne method outside of Champagne in order to try not to step on the Champenoise toes.
Well, you kind of can't blame them. They have been doing it for a couple centuries.
Absolutely.
Tex, thanks for laying all that groundwork for us. Let's go ahead and get started with the Brut. If you folks haven't opened your bottle at home, please do so now and pour yourself a generous portion. Tex, Brut's a dry wine, but there's variations within that style. Could you explain a little more for our audience?
Well, Brut, as you know, is a sugar level as opposed to a blend. And so our Brut level is 9 grams per liter. We're looking for the balance where the acid and the sugar balance. And we don't want it to be slightly sweet or slightly sour. We want a good, even balance that doesn't really, is seamless, basically. That's what we're looking for.
And can you tell us the blend of grapes used in your Brut?
It's about 60-40 right now, Chardonnay to Pinot Noir.
It might be important to mention this, so we want your opinion. What kind of glassware do you recommend for sparkling wine?
Now the sommeliers are getting it. The hip thing to do is to serve it in Burgundy glasses or, you know, a white wine glass. Personally, I think it's a fad, but, you know, that's me. The trumpet-shaped flutes are kind of cool looking, but you can't smell anything. All the volatilization is going off and around it. So something that comes back, a tulip about this height, 6 ounces is a good shape for capturing it all and seeing the bubbles.
What's the ideal temperature for serving sparkling wine?
It should be just about 45 degrees, not 45 to 50, somewhere in there.
Just so our audience is clear about this, can you remind us why serving wine too cold is a bad thing?
Cold blocks your ability to smell anything. And for the Charmat and the bulk processed sparkling wine, that's probably a good thing.
All right, well, we've got a bottle that's not too cold. It's a perfect temperature. We're ready to taste the Brut along with Tex.
Tex, what are you picking up in this wine?
I usually let people taste without giving them a whole lot of detail because everybody's palate's just a little bit different and they pick up different characteristics. But for me, as a descriptor, I swirl it, sniff it. There's a perfumey, freshly risen bread dough to baked bread characteristics or a little crustiness to it. Like when you put a bread in a wood-fired oven, you can pick up a little bit of that crust character.
Tex, I get a lot of lemon citrus, real bright, fresh floral aromas, and a little bit of dried or maybe baked apple as well.
Yes. And then as I'm going through the middle of the wine, I pick up more of the Chardonnay characteristics, which are lemon, citrus, floral, little peach, little pear. And then also we'll pick up the Pinot Noir characteristics, which are more raspberry, strawberry, sometimes a little bit cherry or plum, depending on the level of ripeness at which it was picked. And I also pick up the vanilla cream notes of the malolactic.
I have to agree with you on the Chardonnay taste. I pick more of that up than the Pinot. It's more bright fruit and peach to me, but great acidity, and I love the finish.
Yeah, for me, that's just got this wonderful creamy element and great texture to it, and that bright, fresh acidity is exactly what I'm looking for in a nice sparkling wine. You mentioned a term, malolactic fermentation, that some of our viewers may not be familiar with. If you're unfamiliar with it, it's an optional secondary fermentation that converts malic acid into lactic acid.
So further translation would be, think green tart apple into creamy. So folks, don't forget this is a wine tasting and we want you to be tasting the wine along with us. We're moving on to the rosé now. So pop that bottle open, pour yourself a glass. Jeff's gonna pour a glass for me. And we're gonna ask Tex about this rosé. Rosé is a little different than Brut. So Tex, what is the blend on this that's different from the Brut?
The blend on the rosé is about 56% Chardonnay and 44% Pinot Noir. And we look primarily for particular aromatics, the red fruit aromatics, raspberry and strawberry.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you on the aromatic complexity. I'm also getting some like bright cherry, maybe a cherry blossom with the strawberries.
I see a lot of that Pinot Noir influence here. It still has that really bright, fresh, sound like an echo, but that bright, fresh, crisp acidity. And the finish for me has got this really nice almost a super ripe strawberry. It's not quite as heavy as some other red fruits could be, but it's a really nice, fresh style.
I get that. I love that. That is definitely strawberry on the finish, Jeff. That's a good point.
What I really like about it is the expression of the Pinot Noir grape itself, which tends to have more red fruit characters, has a little more body, a little more depth of character for me. Even though it's still predominantly Chardonnay, the Chardonnay buoys that characteristic, but doesn't allow it to become overwhelming.
Hey, Tex, would you be offended if somebody put fruit in their glass of Scharfenberger?
I'm not offended by anything they do with a glass of Scharfenberger, as long as they buy the bottle, you know, and that they enjoy the wine and they go back again for another bottle.
Great, but how about if someone put fruit in your glass?
Well, I prefer they did not. I like my wines neat.
So I think sparkling wine is wonderful because it's so versatile, and I feel that it works with almost any food. Is there any food that you have found that doesn't work with sparkling wine?
Two things. One is a strong vinaigrette on a salad. The other thing that I don't serve sparkling wine with is desserts, because usually most of them are too sweet. It makes the wine, no matter how sweet the sparkling wine is, come off a little sourish, and it really reduces the aromatics in the mouth because either the cream or the sugar kind of overwhelms everything.
Hey, Tex, after so many years in Anderson Valley and with Scharfenberger cellars in particular, do you still love it?
Oh man, I would not ever. I hope to turn up my toes here and have my ashes scattered around.
So we might be fertilizing with Tex someday?
Maybe, we'll see. You know, some of me will go in the ocean, I hope.
Okay, Tex, we have to ask, do you spit or swallow?
Yes.
It's a perfect answer. In the business, we need to do both.
Thanks, Tex. It's been an absolute pleasure. You've been wonderful. We appreciate you taking the time out to share your wine and your stories with us today.
Happy trails to you all, and just come on out whenever you can. Shangri-La, it's a beautiful place.
Tex Sawyer of Scharfenberger Cellars. Thanks, Tex. You know, I don't know about you, but I'm feeling a little hungry. People always say that food and wine go together. So, let's talk food. Today, we're visiting Faubourg Wines, a retail wine shop and wine bar located in the historic Marigny neighborhood of New Orleans. Specializing in high-quality, small production wines from around the world, Faubourg Wines is a self-proclaimed friendly and fearless neighborhood wine shop. Here to help us pair the Scharfenbergers with some great cheese is the proprietor of Faubourg Wines, Catherine Markel. Catherine, thanks so much for having us today.
Hi, thank you.
So we've been tasting the Scharfenberger Brut and Rosé. So why don't you tell us about the cheese you've selected to pair with that?
I chose 2 American cheeses to go with this American wine, and I'm gonna play off a couple of my favorite aspects of the wine. So here we have the Walton Umber from upstate New York. This is a raw cow's milk cheese, and I chose this to pair with the sort of champagne-like, creamy, toasty elements of the Scharfenberger Brut. The other cheese that I chose is the Oregon Blue from the Rogue Creamery in Oregon. I would normally not recommend necessarily pairing a blue cheese with sparkling wine, but in this case it really works because this is a very mild blue cheese. It's a really light, mild, creamy blue cheese.
Terrific. Well, let's dig in, shall we?
Okay, great. So I'm gonna start with the Walton Umber.
This looks delicious.
Yes, it is. And this cheese does have an edible rind on it, and I encourage you to dig
Thank
into
you.
that. Let's try that with the Brut.
Mmm, this is good.
It works. I do like the fact, what you said about the rind, and it brings the toastiness out in the wine. I didn't find that as much when we just drank the Brut by itself, but the cheese really brings that aspect out.
And almost kind of a caramel quality.
Yeah, the cheese has definitely got that quality to me and brings it out a little in the wine, but the wine still stays nice and crisp and fresh, and I love an edible rind.
Good pairing.
All right, well, let's try this again, but this time with the rosé, shall we?
Definitely. There you go. There's the Oregon Blue.
This kind of works for me too. These wines are really versatile.
It's got a lot going on in it. It's very effervescent and expansive is the only word that comes to mind.
Those
But
aren't bad words.
It's,
That works.
kind of wakes me up.
I really like that this cheese for me, which is so creamy feels a little almost less creamy with this rosé. There's almost a more granular sort of thing going on there, and for me that's the cheese and wine pairing of the day.
Yeah.
Right.
I think with cheese and wine pairings, you're either going for common elements that go well with each other, or contrasting elements that contrast in a really pleasant way. And I think that's kind of what's happening here. You get that sort of nice, clean, bright strawberry, but then you kind of have this tart blue cheese that plays with that really well.
Yeah.
I think it works. I wouldn't have said so at the beginning, but nice pairing. Thanks, Catherine.
Thank you.
Happy surprises. All right, well, these are some great pairings with cheese, but let's take a minute and talk about some other food pairings that might pair well with the Scharfenbergers. Jeff?
When it comes to bubbly, it's hard to deny the classics. Caviar, smoked salmon, and oysters have that great briny, salty component that goes beautifully with crisp, dry whites. Adding the bubbles is just a bonus. Rich, fatty foods like foie gras, if your state hasn't banned it yet, and lobster with butter. The bubbles come through and they cleanse your palate, freshen it up for that next bite.
All right, and so for those of us who might not have caviar on hand, Susan, anything else?
So the flip side of that, you can think sushi. A lot of people will be really daunted at pairing wines with sushi, but sparkling wine really is very versatile. And so that's why there's a whole host of flavors in a bite of sushi. And for the most part, a very versatile wine is going to be the only thing you want to put with it. So if you've got a little roe on top of that salmon roll, it works really, really well.
And this one isn't a classic, but it really should be. Fried chicken. What do we all drink with fried chicken?
Coke.
Soda.
Yeah.
What's soda got? Bubbles.
Makes sense.
Adding alcohol is just a bonus.
Sure.
I do also want to stress that sparkling wine isn't a special occasion wine. You can just drink it with anything. And, you know, Jeff mentioned fried chicken. People think of cheese and salamis and breads. What's the best thing? Pizza. So I love pizza and rosé wine. It's one of my favorite things.
So it sounds like if you're ever in doubt, bubbles are a great way to go just because of the versatility.
Absolutely.
Great. For even more food pairings, including a few from today's drinking buddy, Tex Sawyer, visit our website at spitsandswallows.com. And now it's time for our tip of the day.
Everybody talks about how versatile sparkling wine can be with food, and some people are smart enough to take advantage of that and bring it to their table on a regular basis. But for most people, we experience sparkling wine at parties, celebrations, weddings, large gatherings. And while people may not walk into your party and say, "I'd like a glass of sparkling wine, please," once they find out it's available, everybody wants it. So the traditional method of pouring a bottle of champagne for someone: you pour, you wait for the head, and you wait, and top it off, which usually requires waiting for the head. Not a speedy process. One guest happy, the rest of them waiting. Here's a better way to do this. You can set up 3, 4, 5, however many you need. You generally get 6 glasses out of a bottle of sparkling wine, and you just pour till that foam hits the top, and then move to the next glass. While you're doing that, the foam on the first glass is fading away to nothing, and you can go back and top it off. And again, if you're lucky, you can get away with pouring one more time across all 4, and you've got 4 perfect pours and 4 guests ready for the party. And that is our tip of the day. Get to your party faster.
We hope some of the things that we've discussed today will help to make your next trip down the wine aisle a little less intimidating. To see more of our interview with Scharfenberger's Tex Sawyer, learn more about great wines, and some helpful tips, visit us on the web at spitsandswallows.com. There you can find out when our next episode airs and when to tune in to participate in a live chat with our next drinking buddy. And please remember to follow us on Twitter and like us on Facebook.
Can I get a refill?
All right. And why don't you pour yourself another glass at home as well? Until next time, I'm Chris Maroy.
And I'm Jeff Warden.
And I'm Susan Hislop.
Thanks for joining us on Spits and Swallows. Cheers. All right, bring it over.